Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Blue Devil Beat. I'm your host, Ranjan Jindal, here joined by my co-host, Caleb Dudley. Caleb, how was your break, man?
It was good. Just, back in the swing of things.
And yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday, Ranjan and I made the trip up to Bank of America Stadium, home of the AC Championship. Watched the Panthers lose a heartbreaker. Super wild card weekend. Fun trip, but, not the outcome we wanted, for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely a fun trip. We're also joined by Abby DiSalvo, our sports editor, a veteran guest of Blue Devil Beat at this point. Abby, welcome back. How was your break?
My break was pretty great. It was traveling all over the place, covering games, so it was a good time.
Yeah, Abby traversed the country to cover Duke sports, as is the job of the Chronicle sports editor. Well, welcome back to everyone from the break. We've been off for about a month as we have been on our holiday break, but we're going to be back recapping the past chaotic month in Duke athletics, from football's bowl game and the Sun Bowl to men's and women's basketball and more. So definitely excited for this episode. First, this podcast is brought to you by Duke Stores. Support your favorite Duke team. Duke Stores is home to the only collection of merchandise brought to you straight from Duke University. Go to shop.duke.edu for all of your Duke merch. All right, let's start football because that season is officially over, so we can finish what happened. And last time we were talking with Abby, we were talking about the ACC Championship and how Duke was going to be headed to the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas. So Abby and Caleb were both there for the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. Duke won 42-39 against Arizona State in quite a thrilling affair there. One of the best bowl games of the year, I would say.
Certainly.
Well, how was El Paso, guys? How was the experience of New Year's Eve in El Paso?
Yeah, we didn't really get the New Year's Eve experience. Abby had a pretty early flight, so we made it up with the East Coast folks to New Year's, and then we decided to call it in. There was a star drop that looked pretty cool in El Paso, but unfortunately we didn't make it out there. But other than that, El Paso was good. A lot of mountains, obviously. It was great views. Sun Bowl was really cool. It's obviously a very historic stadium, second oldest bowl game in the country. So it was a great time. Yeah.
You enjoyed it? too?
Yeah,
Same
super
thing?
fun.
All right, let's talk football. So I mentioned the 42-39 game. Duke it was a pattern of what Duke has been all year. Very, very good offensively and, not great defensively. And with the losses of some players due to the NFL, it made it even worse. And so Arizona State scored a lot, but Duke made the plays when it mattered most. So Abby, I'll just start with you. What were your overall takeaways from that game, and how was Duke able to pull it off in the end?
Well, like you said, I think the offense was really the showstopper here, and Keyshawn Brown had pretty much just the best game, surprising game. He had 178 yards, 10 receptions. It broke a bowl game record, I'm pretty sure. And so just to see him kind of finally connecting with Darian, it's been a little hit or miss all year, but that was really fun to watch. And then Nate Shepard also had a great game. He kind of led the rushing attack on the ground, but Darian also ran for a little bit too.
Yeah, Darian was just using his legs there. He had that one long run.
Yeah.
She mentioned Keyshawn Brown. We'll talk about the news that he is entering the portal and has found his new home. But that offense seemed to really click for Duke throughout. Felt like a nice exclamation point on what's been a solid year for this Duke offense.
Yeah, I think, Duke's all year wanted to push it deep. They had a lot of success there against Arizona State. The Sun Devils were missing a couple of their top players in the secondary, so Duke was really able to take advantage over the top. Brown had 2 monster catches down the field. And Arizona State did a lot of the same thing to Duke, who was missing Chandler Rivers. So it was just a lot of high-flying offense, a lot of deep shots. But yeah, Duke did well to, finish drives when it mattered. Darian was 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, so another good game for him.
Flipping over to the defensive side, Abby, obviously Arizona State scored 40 points, but 2 turnovers at the end, most fittingly perhaps another Luke Mergott interception to seal the deal, kind of like the ACC championship. That's been kind of an aspect of Duke's defense that they have, hung their hats on a lot, getting turnovers, especially when it mattered most. What did you see from the defense against Arizona State?
Yeah, so I think the moment where it really came together was after a 4th down that Duke didn't convert on, and it kind of was towards the end of the 4th quarter. Things felt a little bit out of reach. Like, it kind of seemed like the game wasn't going to end up in the Blue Devils' favor. And then Kendall Johnson forced a really critical fumble. Mekhi Jones recovered the ball, and that gave Duke the chance that it needed to make the next touchdown, which Queso caught. So I think just seeing them step up in that moment, and then Luke Mergott obviously had another interception to seal the game after he had one in the ACC championship. So his story, kind of stepping up to lead the linebacker room, coming in clutch when it mattered. Again, really cool to see as the cap on the season.
Yeah, and Caleb, we mentioned the people who weren't playing, Chandler Rivers and ones on the line. Obviously, Jeff Sims looks pretty good against this defense, but I don't know. They stepped up when it mattered most. What do you have to add about the defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously defense has been they've been shorthanded all year
Yeah.
in terms of injury, and then you're missing Vincent Anthony and Chandler Rivers, which just makes it really tough. That's your two best players on defense, but credit to them. The forced fumble the drive before, I thought was a really big play. Arizona State's tough. Had a true freshman running back, just kind of a tough moment for him there. But those kind of things happen in bowl games. A lot of guys playing that haven't played a lot of football, and so good for Duke taking advantage of the opportunity. But yeah, Sims, for being the backup, he had quite the day on the ground and in there.
Indeed. And Abby, you wrote afterwards about your sidebar was a big picture look at both the season and what Duke can do moving forward. Could you talk a little bit about that and what Coach Diaz and some of the players said after the Sun Bowl?
Yeah, so basically what I wrote about was just that at the start of the season, Duke had a bit of a roller coaster. They lost a couple games that maybe should have discouraged them, but they ended with 4 trophies in a row. I mean, if you think the Victory Bell, the state, the AC championship, and then a bowl game trophy, it was a pretty incredible end of the season. They just kind of really persevered. But afterwards, Manny was talking about how everyone on the team really felt that this wasn't the ceiling, and they think they can do better next year, and they want to kind of raise that. I think he called it like the high water mark for the program, and really just continue to grow. It'll be great because there's some really key players returning. Mensah will be back, Barkate will be back, Shepard will be back, so it'll be exciting to see what they can do, and I think they're all have their sights set on higher things.
Indeed, they do. And now we're at this point of the season where it's chaos in college football. The portal has opened. But luckily for you, you do not have to be scrolling Twitter every minute to find out what's happening because we have our own resident Twitter scroller, Caleb Dudley, who has compiled, we have a live tracker on our website of every portal departure and arrival for Duke football. So Caleb, why don't you give us, it's obviously not finalized yet, but the rundown of what's happened in the portal for Duke, both the good and the bad, and yeah, where are we at?
Yeah, I think it's kind of become a trend at Duke now. There wasn't a ton of impact players to go through in the portal in terms of guys going out, just mostly depth pieces, young guys that, looking for a chance to play somewhere else. Obviously, Brown was the big name there. He announced he was going to be heading to Virginia Tech yesterday as we're recording this. So he's a big loss of receiver. But other than that, it's mostly depth guys. Peyton Jones, backup running back, for example, a couple other guys, some offensive linemen that didn't play as much. Then in terms of guys coming in, obviously Duke needed some help in the secondary. After what happened this year, they brought in 3 DBs. Flowers from Western Kentucky, corner. Kion Loud, who was probably the best corner in the FCS this year. That was in the portal from Montana. They're bringing a safety from North Texas as well. So trying to retool that side of the ball. Oh, I guess Terry Moore is the other guy that's gone. He's kind of a big deal, but didn't play this year. So retooling that pretty much entire secondary, which will be big. Receiver had to reload after Brown left, and the graduation of Samir Higgins. So Jerry Richardson from Penn, maybe the best receiver in the FCS. He was All-American in the FCS at Penn. Then Javen Nicholas, All-Conference at Charlotte, also coming in there. Offensive line, they had 2 new tackles, one from Cal, one from Coastal Carolina, with Bruno Fina and Brian Parker heading off to the NFL. And, yeah, backup running back, C.J. Campbell from Rutgers. Yeah, is that it? Maybe. Oh, another veteran quarterback. Probably won't play. I would hope doesn't play behind Darian Mensah, but he could, I guess. Henry Beelin, I guess, transferred, so replacing him. But yeah, it's been a lot of movement still going. The portal ends the 16th. We're recording this on the 11th, so could be some late game additions, but should be just about wrapped up, I think, for Duke.
There you have it, right there. Wow, very comprehensive, and yeah, you're right. There was a lot of holes that Duke needed to fill, but a lot of talent coming back. Like Abby mentioned, that trio offensively is going to be definitely something to watch. And these past 4 years of Duke football, what a remarkable turnaround from where Duke was in 2021 and 2020. And a little sneak peek, Caleb and I have a piece coming out kind of recapping those 4 years. And we talked to some of the past players who were, some of the biggest parts of that turnaround: Dwayne Carter, Jalen Calhoun, Jordan Moore. And then some also coaches who were there throughout the tenure, like David Feely and Zon Burden, the wide receivers coach. So exciting stuff. It's a lot of words that we subjected poor Abby to, unfortunately, but block us some time. It's been fun to write and really cover this turnaround because it has been remarkable, as Feely talked to us about. So yeah, anything else about Duke football?
No, great season.
Great season. And we will talk more about football as we get closer to April for the blue and white game. I'm sure there's more portal stuff happening soon, so we'll talk about that too. But all right, let's switch gears to the basketball side of things. It's been quite a season for Duke, and the past few games have really been, I guess I will say, different than the first few games of the season. But Duke has found its way to win every single one except the 82-81 loss against Texas Tech in Madison Square Garden. Abby was there. We'll briefly talk about Texas Tech, and then we'll mainly focus on this week's slate of games. But obviously, it was a crazy situation there. So why don't you tell us about kind of what happened there in that second half, and what was the message from Shire and the players after that loss?
Yeah, so a crazy game. Obviously, Duke was behind to kind of start. They came close back to Texas Tech around halftime. At one point, they had a 17-point lead, and then in the last 16 minutes of the game, they blew that lead and they lost the game by 1 point. Cameron Boozer had kind of a last-second three-pointer that didn't make it, and so that was kind of the end of the game. And afterwards, I think the environment was definitely different. I mean, obviously, it's harder to lose games emotionally than it is to win games. And so seeing the players kind of handle that was interesting just because we haven't seen them lose all that much. And so we talked to Cameron after the game, and he was definitely disappointed. And Shire was definitely disappointed. But I think that they felt it was a good reminder that they have to continue to grow. And there are areas where I think they have improved. The free throw shooting against Texas Tech was less than ideal. They've seemed to improve that over the course of the ACC play that they've now started. Shooting has still been a little streaky, but that was another big issue against Texas Tech. So, yeah, it was definitely, I think, a good way for them to grow.
Yeah, it felt like for me, in all of these close games throughout the year, Duke has found a way to win. But for the first time, Duke looked tight, in my opinion. They looked a little nervous. Obviously, the situation where Texas Tech had like 6 players eligible after injuries and fouls, and they had, guys guarding Cameron Boozer who were 6'5", and I think Duke just was so expected to win that all of a sudden they kind of tensed up, and especially Boozer and Christian Anderson went off. So credit where credit is due, but I did kind of see that mental aspect from Duke, and it happens sometimes, and I don't want to chalk this one up fully to that because there were mistakes, like Abby mentioned, to improve upon, but that's kind of what I saw there. Moving on to this ACC slate. So there have been 4 wins in a row after that Texas Tech game. Most recently, 2 wins this week against ranked opponents Louisville and SMU. All of them have been kind of characterized by slower starts, but second half surges. Caleb, when you look at this these past 2 weeks as a whole, what have you seen from the Duke team, both positives and I guess negatives?
Yeah, I mean, obviously starting 4-0 is great. I don't think any of the 4 games have really inspired me outside of maybe the second half against Louisville, which I thought was probably maybe the best half of that Duke's played all year. The defense is just not. It hasn't been what it was ahead of before the Texas Tech game. They let Georgia Tech and Florida State throw in quite a couple threes. Especially Florida State, who shoots the most threes in the country. They were just let them fly.
Yeah.
A lot of them were falling. But yeah, even against Louisville, Ali Khalifa had 4 threes, and he's made like 2 all year or whatever it was. And they were just letting him shoot it, and he kept making them. So the defense has just been left a little bit to be desired, in my opinion. They moved Caden Boozer to the starting lineup instead of Dame Sarr. I think the defense maybe was taking a hit there. Sarr returned to the starting lineup against SMU, and he's by far the best defender on the team in terms of guys on the perimeter. But yeah, offense-wise, Isaiah Evans, I think, has been the story of the conference slate. He's really come on. He's got, 20-plus the last 3 games. Hit a crazy 3 yesterday, like a turnaround, step back,
Yes.
crazy. But he's played really well. Obviously, Boozer's doing Cam Boozer things. So offense is, seems to be doing just fine, but defense has still left some room for concern.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about that Louisville game because Abby was there. Classic tale of 2 halves game there from Duke, and a point guard emerged there in the second half, quite so for Duke. Talk about that coverage experience and what you saw in that second half from Duke.
Absolutely. Yeah, covering Louisville was great. Again, another crazy game. I was getting flashbacks to Texas Tech while we were sitting there.
Yeah.
But Duke really came through in the second half. Karen Boozer, Caleb Foster. Really, it was Caleb Foster leading the charge. He found a way to kind of get down in the paint. He was playing pretty aggressively and I think had a career-high points. It was 20 points, I'm pretty sure. So that was really cool to see him kind of come through, take the charge, lead the team, especially because in the first half, Cameron wasn't really getting that many shots. Isaiah was having a little bit of struggles as well from deep. So that really turned the game around, I think, momentum-wise, and he really kept his team in it.
Yeah, not to be lost from that Caleb Foster performance is his defensive side, which I felt like was very impressive, especially in the second half against Louisville shooters. Isaac McNeely is a tough task to guard because he's always running around, and Caleb Foster kept with him or whoever was on him, whether it be Boozer, Foster, and then Sarr guarding Ryan Conwell, and limiting him to, I don't know if he made
0
a 3 in the second half, right? Yeah. He made 4 in the first half and 0 in the second half. So just the effort defensively was so much better. And I thought the ball pressure from the guards was the difference. And there was a clip going around of Shire's halftime speech where he was, firing them up. And I think that really worked because it seemed to me that Duke was an inspired second half team there. Anything from that game else? All right.
Yeah.
Well, SMU was the most recent game. Caleb and I were watching bits and pieces of it as we were getting service in the Panthers Stadium, but a little bit of a slow start, and Duke was able to come back and take control for most of the game, and especially in that second half. SMU obviously without their leading scorer, Boobie Miller. But Abby, curious from that game again, just overall takeaways from a win against a quality SMU team, Boobie Miller there or not?
Yeah, it was definitely a great game. One of the interesting things was the starting lineup was a little bit differently. You had Dame back in there, and then Malik Brown had his first Duke start ever. So I think the goal with that was to probably amp it up on the defensive end and hopefully prevent one of those slow starts. It didn't necessarily work because SMU got out to an 11-0 lead, and then Isaiah hit a three-pointer and had 2 free throws to kind of get Duke back in it. They found their momentum from there. So once again, a slow start. Patrick Ngongba had a great game. He had 17 points. That tied his career high. And so I think on the defensive end, they did eventually find their rhythm. Foul trouble was an issue for Malik early, and he had to kind of go out within just a couple minutes because he had 2 fouls. So it would be interesting to see if he returns to starting lineup again.
Yeah, maybe that's what Pat Ngongba needed to light a fire under him a little bit, benching, and maybe him playing against a second-string center was a little bit better. But yeah, interesting game for sure for Duke. Caleb, thoughts on that win?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, you got to quit getting out to 11-0 deficits to start a game. It's going to catch up to you eventually. Obviously, I think if SMU has Miller, they probably extend that even further and maybe win the game. But yeah, it's going to be tough if you keep doing that in conference play, especially because you're not going to have your A game on offense every night. You're not going to get 20 points from both Boozer and Evans probably every night. So you're just going to have to quit, find a way. I don't know what that is, how they fix that, but it's kind of been a problem all year. So just really interested to see, if they make any adjustments down the stretch, if that keeps being a problem.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And it's a tricky road trip coming up to the West Coast for Duke. I think the first time Duke's taken this. Yeah, last year it didn't, which is when the start of it. So the Cal Stanford back-to-back. You saw Louisville go down there and lose. Notre Dame lost one of the games. It's a tricky place. I know both of those teams are, above average quality teams, but maybe not to the level of Duke, but nonetheless an 11 p.m. tip. Yep. I'm sorry, Abby.
Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Wednesday.
It'll be a fun one.
On a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
You got a lot of classes Thursday, too.
Thursday morning.
Yeah, I think, talking about the road trip, I think if you look at like the rankings, they're 2 of the worst 4 teams Duke has left. But you got to think both of them. I mean, this is their chance to put something on their resume if they want to try to sneak into the tournament, stay in contention. It's gonna be tough. I mean, they've both been pesky all year. I think. Yeah. I mean, I think both are improved on last year quite a bit. So, you see what happens. West Coast is tough. It seems like SMU maybe had the flu, so hopefully Boopy didn't spread that over to any of the Duke guys before they get on the plane over to California. But yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting. And then you have, I'm talking about next week, Wake and Louisville coming back at home. So a big stretch of 4 games here for Duke.
Yeah, I think the thing is, look, at the end of the day, Duke is 15-1 right now with that resume and that schedule is very, very impressive. The slow starts are obviously a thing to improve, but what I've liked is how Duke has closed out games for the majority of them, obviously the Texas Tech game being an exception. And to me, it's just, we saw this with, I think it was the women's team a couple years ago. There was just like, they always fell down to early starts, and it's more of a mindset thing than anything. It's like being ready to play immediately and not, and executing on the offensive end early, because I think sometimes Duke doesn't fully execute and their sets, gets a little impatient at times, especially early offensively, and has a tendency to turn it over. So handling the ball and just locking in on defense is going to be important early. But yeah, it should be some fun games. Great coverage all around. Definitely check out our website at dukechronicle.com. In a few weeks, we'll have rivalry edition stuff. We'll talk all about that when the time comes, but we are looking at the first UNC game in a few weeks from now. So exciting stuff. Well, Abby, thank you so much for joining us as always.
Thanks for having me.
Tremendous stuff. We're going to talk about the women's game, women's team soon, which is on a
heater
for sure. Welcome back, guys. We are now joined by Myles Powicki, one of our women's basketball beats. Myles, welcome back to Blue Devil Beat, man. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me on again. It's excited to be on again.
Yeah. How was your break, man?
It was excellent. I mean, just home for the most of the time, except for my one big beautiful trip to the mecca of college basketball, college sports, maybe just sports in general. The JMA Wireless Dome in beautiful Syracuse, New York. So couldn't ask for anything more, really.
Yeah, and Myles was there to cover, obviously, Duke versus Syracuse women's basketball. So we're going to talk about the women's team with Myles, who is on now a 7-game winning streak. The fourth of those wins was at Syracuse, a 74-51 win to start back conference play. Duke had won against Virginia Tech early in the season, but this was the first game after 2 non-conference wins against South Dakota State and Belmont. We'll start out with the Syracuse game, which I felt like was a big statement to kind of go back to the way things have been done in the Kara Lawson era at Duke. What did you see from Duke's 71-51 win at Syracuse?
Well, what I saw was a team really just like coming together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously throughout the early slate, the team looked very disconnected by, and that was kind of taken advantage of not by just the cream of the crop in UCLA and LSU and South Carolina, but also some less astronomically talented teams. Like, I mean, obviously Baylor is a very solid squad, and so is West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
But both of them were able to kind of just take advantage of the flaws that Duke women's basketball had. But kind of as you're seeing, they're patching up those flaws, and then they went again, played against another team of kind of that Baylor, West Virginia ilk, and kind of a Notre Dame squad in a down year, and really turned around. I mean, I might be getting ahead of myself, but after seeing that Syracuse game, I could kind of see this kind of run continuing to happen with them really building some momentum together.
Yeah, it felt like in that game, there was that second quarter where Duke went on like a 19-6 run or something like that and really locked in on defense. And you're right, that chemistry has been so important because you have 2 players who didn't play at all last year with injuries. You have a couple freshmen and you just have some losses. So it took a while for this team to gel, but you really see that, like you mentioned, against Syracuse. And it felt like the defense has really come back to life.
Yeah.
Why do you think the defense has improved so much, and what parts of the defense have you seen that have improved from Duke?
I think that when you're thinking about defense, especially with a lot of these Kara Lawson teams, it's cohesiveness as a main part. And year after year, she's talked about kind of how important the center and the paint players are on defense, because on defense they're the ones with the vision of the court when they're playing kind of inside the paint. So I think it's been rather evident earlier on in the season when Ari Roberson was out there. She was, redshirt freshman coming back from an injury, hasn't touched a basketball. Well, I mean, obviously she's touched a basketball, but she hasn't touched a basketball court in a competitive environment in a long, long time. And when you're getting in tight games closer there, you're kind of doing that. And then kind of on a similar vein, when you have Toby Fournier kind of working with increased expectations and an increased role on the offensive end of the court and just a different supporting cast around her. I mean, it's a very similar supporting cast around her, but you have players like Anna Vikstrom and Emily Skinner when active and Riley Nelson who haven't shared the court with Toby Fournier or any of Duke's other bigs. It's kind of just a different experience to get together and really be on the same page when which they have to be when they're on defense. So I think that you really do see a lot of that coming together and kind of coming to fruition.
Ranjan mentioned the 2 players that missed last year with injury. Obviously, those are Roberson and Nelson. Just talk a little bit about their growth throughout the season. Obviously, now both of them have kind of emerged as true contributors for this team. Just kind of talk about how they've leveled up their game as of recent.
I think what really stands out to me, so Roberson, like throughout her entire career, obviously her very young career and through last year, the emphasis has always been on her ceiling, because it's astronomical. She is 6'5" center with a crazy wingspan who can shoot the ball from beyond the arc and like make plays in the mid range. She can pass well out of the post. She can really run the actions off of pick and rolls really well. Like she's incredible, and just seeing that kind of come to fruition has been very rewarding for all those who have, all of us who have kind of seen that potential in flashes throughout it. But I feel like Riley Nelson to me has really been a standout. I forgot exactly which game, but I know that she led the Blue Devils in scoring.
Boston College.
Yep, in the Boston College game. And she's just been very versatile. I mean, she came out of high school, I believe, as a very strong 3-point shooter, but that wasn't exactly the role that Coach Lawson, I think, expected her to play on this Duke team, and she's been able to do that in spades. And despite even a rather, well, I think she was 0 for 7 against Cal, so a pretty weak game from her there. But throughout this kind of breakout run from Duke, she's been one of the players who I've really seen as taking more than one step forward, like a bunch, as she's kind of become more confident and comfortable in the system. And I think that she has the offensive chops to really stick it to any defense in the country, especially if they're willing to help off of her when you have Toby Fournier or Delaney Thomas, who just dropped 20 in the paint, or if you have Team Mare or Ashton Jackson behind the arc. I think that she's been relatively under. I don't know if underrated is a proper term, but underdefended so far in this young season. And if that continues to happen, then she has the talent to continue to put these massive numbers.
Yeah, I think you made some great points there. And for Riley first, it's interesting to see that it almost seems like Kara's running some similar stuff that she did with Reagan Richardson last year for Riley Nelson. Reagan was a very talented wing scorer who left a big hole there, and Riley has the potential to be that and probably even more consistent shooter than Reagan was. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing her, grow every game. It's been really fun to see for a team that has been struggling offensively. And then Ari, you mentioned all of her goods, but I remember one game, if my lip reading skills are correct, Kara yelled at her and said, you need to get stronger on the glass. You can't just keep, taking shots and not fight on the defensive end. And
it's hilarious to me every time I see that Team Mare has more rebounds in a game than Ari Roberson.
Yeah.
Because looking at them standing next to each other, it's just like, how does that work? I think that was the case in a couple of the most recent wins, which, I mean, obviously,
yeah,
they'll work that out. But sorry, you were saying?
No, it's just, you're right. And I think that maybe was the Syracuse game, and Ari came out with 12 boards and really responded to that feedback. And so I think the next step of her game, like you mentioned, is being that anchor on the defensive end who not only can get blocks, but can fight down and get boards because she's, pretty skinny because of how tall she is. And so maybe she can get boxed out a little bit. So can she fight down there will be a big key for this Duke team. You mentioned Team Mare. Tyna's now in her senior year with Duke, has been kind of the rock of this team for this year. And she's the lead guard in a room that has lost a lot of guard depth, but she's been so consistent, and Kara has raved about her throughout the season, it feels like, in press conferences. How important is Team Mare to this team, and what have you seen from her development in her senior year at the point guard position?
Well, I'm actually going to be taking a page out of right out of one of Coach Lawson's pressers, and I think she argued. I don't remember if it was BC or just one of the other home games. It might have been. I think it was actually Notre Dame.
Okay.
I think I hopped in to listen to that presser immediately when Sarah put it in there. But regardless, she was saying that she didn't really see it as much of development from Tia as much as just a different role, and how last year we had obviously a lot of the actions were for Ash and Reagan, and it was kind of really building a lot for Toby also, and there was just much less involvement for Tia available. But this year, like Coach is saying, that preseason they told T that this is a year in which we need you to be a more ball dominant player, and not only as a passer but as a shooter and as a scorer in all aspects of the game. So I think that's a lot of what I've seen at T this year, is that just the increased confidence in the bigger role and the increased I'm sure trust from her teammates and coaching staff and everywhere has just, like, all of these factors have contributed to raise her game.
Yeah.
Not exponentially so, but very, very significantly so, because she was a good player coming into this year, but now she is truly a part of the class of the ACC at the point guard position.
Yeah. Obviously, the biggest win of this win streak has been Notre Dame, a ranked win, first ranked win of the season for Duke after playing quite a few ranked opponents and falling early in the season. Let's talk about that game, kind of what went right there for the Blue Devils and, just Notre Dame in general.
I mean, I think what went right for the Blue Devils is everything, man. I mean, looking at some of the most prolific scoring outputs we've seen from the Coach Lawson era, of course, and a great defense all over the court. I mean, you could point to any number of talented, or any number of, I guess, 6 of Notre Dame's very talented players who can score, and Duke neutralized all of them. Vanessa De Jesus, I thought she was going to have a pretty big role in her return to Cameron Indoor Stadium. That might just be the narrative junkie in me, but I feel that I thought that she was really going to have something to say, and Duke made sure she didn't. But I think that was just a really enlightening look as to how high this Duke team's ceiling has risen from the beginning of the year, when you're looking at a pretty similar game. Well, a game against a pretty similarly talented opponent in Baylor. I mean, obviously, Baylor doesn't have Hannah Hidalgo, but they're a very solid team. And just the stark contrast in kind of what happened there and what happened here. And as Duke continues to kind of work their way into this tough ACC schedule with much more frequent games than they're getting out of conference, and against much harder opponents, then that is one that I'm sure the team's going to look back on as the kind of, we can beat good opponents and we can do hard things and we can kind of it can build a lot of that internal confidence that they've been looking for. If we can execute on offense, we can execute on defense, we can not turn the ball over, we can do X, Y, and Z against one of the more talented teams in the country. So I think a win like that is invaluable, especially in the manner in which it came, especially after, what was it, over 4 in ranked games going into it.
We can handle hard better, some might say.
Some would. I know one who would say that.
I do too. Speaking of that one, if you haven't checked it out, we have a comprehensive Kara Lawson profile. Sorry for the shameless plug on our website. Me and fellow women's basketball beat Martin Heinzelman wrote it, and he was talking about it. We were talking about it earlier in December, but it really kind of encapsulates what has made her such an impactful coach for this group. And you've seen that, and you've seen her develop a team that looked lost early in the season, and a lot of criticism was being dealt fairly, I think, at the team and what it started, and her too. But you've seen this turnaround, and I will mention we are recording this before Duke takes on Stanford at 5 p.m. Sunday night, so anything can happen there. Regardless, it's still been a very impressive ACC start. As we're speaking, Notre Dame is up by 30 against North Carolina, so this team is a really good team beating other ranked teams, so to see Duke do that was very impressive. Myles, great analysis, man. Great stuff. And
thank you all so much for having me on.
Everyone go check out Myles' coverage on the website. He does a great job along with all of our other women's basketball beats. So yeah, this was a great fun episode. First episode back from the break. First episode of 2026.
Yes.
Here's to another great year of Blue Devil beat. Anything else, Caleb, from your end?
Root for the ACC national championship. We've made it.
Oh, yes.
The Miami Hurricanes putting on for the ACC. Big one coming up at home game.
Has the line come out for that yet?
No. But hey, we're not worried about that.
We're not.
ACC,
I'm just curious.
hey, we got a chance.
So Duke is the national champion if Miami wins.
Yeah, we're claiming it.
Okay.
Looking forward to that column on the website.
Yep.
Read Myles' takes of the week too.
Oh,
I'm sure
I try.
Some takes up there. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Have a fantastic week of hopefully a sports-filled week. NFL, NBA, college sports, everything's going on right now. So fun stuff. We'll be back next weekend. For Caleb Dudley, I'm Ranjan Jindal. This has been Blue Devil Beat.